Hello everyone, episode 4, Down to the Wire podcast. We are back talking about all of the latest and greatest in sport from the past week. How are you, Jack?
I'm good. It's a victory Monday. Man United won. The Kansas City Chiefs won. I'm in a good mood.
I mean, Liverpool drew.
So, even happier Monday. Boys are off.
I mean, I guess it's not too often that United win, is it? There we are. Right, we're going to be talking about a lot of different... What did you say, sorry?
It was Fergie time. It was everything. Everything came together. 2-0 down, 3-2 up. Oh, what a time to be alive.
I mean, I can't say I'm happy for you.
Hey, if United win their 2 games in hand, they go third.
Wow.
Oh no, game in hand, sorry. Game in hand, they go third. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be talking about the football. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the Formula 1 big incident there. In fact, it made national news, which I think is the first time, as in it made the main headlines, not just the sports headlines, based on what happened there. So we'll touch on that. We're going to talk a bit about the NFL as well, because that's been a little bit neglected in the past couple of podcasts we've done. So that's where we're going to be heading this evening. But we'll start with the football. Unfortunately, we're going to have to talk about VAR again a little bit, I think, aren't we?
Yeah.
So
I even mentioned this. I said, "Oh, I'm fed up talking about VAR," but
yeah,
you can't avoid it. You can't avoid it.
You can't not talk about it. And it's interesting, I guess. This is almost part of the conversation. But I guess we'll kind of start with Jurgen Klopp's rather prickly interview with Des Kelly on BT Sport. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, that was more around fixture release, wasn't it?
That's true,
I didn't
actually.
watch
Yeah,
the whole interview, but
no, it was.
From
You're
what
right.
I saw, it was mostly, he was congratulating him almost that it's kind of his fault, or maybe not his fault, but BT as a collective for picking Liverpool and then Liverpool picking up yet another injury.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a difficult one, really, because I can see why Kloppo is frustrated. As in, you know, like he said, I think he said Liverpool have been the 12:30 kickoff 3 times so far this season.
United have had it 2, and then 3 other. Well, Liverpool have had it 3 times. I think they're joint with United. Both have had it twice when they've played on a Wednesday. So I think Liverpool had it once, but they played on a Tuesday, so that was okay-ish. But yeah, I think United and Liverpool have both had it twice after playing on a Wednesday, and I think 4 other clubs have had it once. So yeah, there's a lot of clubs that are sort of getting a bit done over by it.
Yeah, but I guess on the other end of the spectrum, you did kind of feel a little bit sorry for Des Kelly, because he's kind of stood there whoa, it's not my fault. I didn't pick the fixture list.
I'm sure he doesn't want to get up for 12:30 kickoffs. I'm sure he'd much rather the 3 o'clock get a nice lie-in. So we're all losers here.
we're all losers. But yeah, you know, it's a bit of a weird one because you know, Klopp. Well, I think in hindsight, you could probably look at it and go, the Klopp was just generally frustrated with how the game had gone. Because as we'll move on to shortly, there were some very bonkers VAR decisions. And you know, he's lost another player to injury. So I think it was maybe a little bit. Of misdirected frustration towards Des Kelly, but equally, I think, I think Jurgen's got a point, isn't he? But then Des Kelly also made the valid point. I mean, you could go back and forth with this, really, isn't it? You can see either side of the argument. I think, you know, Des Kelly kind of said, you know, well, we're following the guidelines given to us by the Premier League.
Yeah.
And then Jurgen Klopp is kind of sitting around going, yeah, but you don't have to pick us for that time kickoff.
Yeah. To be fair, though, BT Sport have. In a sense, it's Premier League's fault in the first place for saying, okay, these are the bundles we're sort of offering for people to purchase.
Yeah, I agree.
And then they've gone, well, one of the ones we'll put out is the 12:30 kickoff, and it's like, I don't think they get. I think there's a priority order between each kickoff depending on who gets first dibs on what game. So I think Sky get first dibs of a game, and that is for like that Sunday afternoon prime time. Then it goes to BT for the 12:30 kickoff. Then it goes to some other ones. So yeah. I mean, to be fair, you look at it from BT's point of view, strictly business, they pay a lot of money for that slot. Because they're competing against Sky for those slots. You know, the reason Premier League players are paid a lot of money is because there's money coming into football. And where does that money come from? BT and Sky and other sponsors. And, you know, it's like, well, you want to get paid a lot of money?
Excuse me.
This is part of the package.
Well, and I guess the thing is as well, is in BT, at the end of the day, it is a business, isn't it? So they've got to look at who's going to bring in the most viewers.
Like, BT aren't going to go out and pick Sheffield United against, was it?
Well, it's interesting because you said, didn't you, on, I can't remember which day it was now, it might have been Saturday evening, you said, I watched a bit of the football, and you said, "Oh, who's on now?" And I think it was like West Brom and
West Brom,
was it
Sheffield
West Brom and
United,
Sheffield,
19th versus 20th, and it's like,
Yeah, and you just-
so you could put that on a 12:30 kickoff. Sure, that's not going to affect anybody. You know what? Chris Wilder was one of 4 or 5 coaches who were the only ones to go to vote against the introduction of the 5-sub rule again. 15 of the clubs said yes. He said it's not in my best interest for Sheffield United. That was purely on the basis of he didn't think that he had a big enough squad for it. But he has absolutely no regard for any of the other clubs who are losing players left, right, and centre. It's like,
No.
like I doubt that all 15 of those are in the same position as your Liverpool, your Man United, your Man City, your Chelsea, your Tottenham, your Arsenal. Or whoever.
They're not the only one, are they?
Yeah, it's like quite a few other teams have gone, you know what? Player safety. We can't be having this every week. So we've got to introduce a 5-sub rule. Like, to be honest, Jurgen said it after the 12:30 game. He said, I would have brought off Andy Robertson for Kostas Tsimikas, or however you say his name.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Tsimikas,
that's not an improvement on that Liverpool team. Everyone knows Robertson's a better player than Tsimikas.
It's an injury prevention thing, isn't it? I don't understand why
no one makes a sub to... Well, some do, but... most case scenarios, you're not really making a sub to improve your team. It's because it's because of someone who's not first choice has to come on. Yeah.
But yeah, and to be honest with you, Klopp alluded to that in that interview, didn't he? You know, like he said to Chris Wilder. But there we go. So there we go. I think the jury's out on it. Basically, I had a bit of a
no. It sounded like you're an Australian. Huh? Jury's out. Jury's out.
The jury's out. We'll move on. I think the jury's out on that one a bit. You can either side with Des Kelly or Jurgen Klopp. I think they both have valid arguments.
Yeah.
Right, we'll briefly move on to VAR. We won't spend too long on it because I think we could say the same every week, really, couldn't we, VAR? And do you know what? It was really interesting how it was Jordan Henderson who I read something about, and regardless of his bias and my bias as a Liverpool fan, but he said just the very fundamental fact that we talk about VAR pretty much more than anything else in football at the moment just shows that there's something wrong. And I thought, you know what, it's not a bad point, actually.
To be fair, though, it's the first time it's really affected Liverpool.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I
don't know about that.
They've been hard done by it in the past. I feel like they've been one of the few teams that you could probably look on balance and said they probably had more decisions than decisions against.
I'm pretty sure I saw a statistic to the contrary. To be honest, I'm pretty sure Liverpool have been.
I saw that statistic.
Like 5 goals.
I saw that statistic. That was all decisions that go to VAR for and against. And on that one, yes, Liverpool had been on the negative side. But when you look at literally ones which go for penalties or goals or offsides which are in their favour or out of their favour, those are the ones that Liverpool are getting a little bit more of.
Yeah, but I mean, you just got to look at for me, you've got to look at that Andy Robertson penalties, and that has got to be one of the softest penalties I've ever seen. Anyway, regardless of the intricacies of VAR in a certain game, I guess when Henderson said that, I thought,
it is rugby, true though what he says.
Yeah. That's what I mean. As in, regardless of your thoughts on whether Liverpool benefits or lose out, as in VAR is too much of a controversial thing at the moment. And for example, in rugby, TMO is used in rugby all the time, right? Mm-hmm. I can think of maybe once or twice where they mention it after the game, where perhaps the TMO has judged it slightly harshly, but even when some decisions are controversial, it's very rarely mentioned. Yet for some reason with football,
it's because with rugby, it's not as finite. It's not cut and dry. In a sense, it is interpretation of the law.
Rules, yeah.
When it comes to football, they have this imaginary line, and they go, right, what's that? Part of his shoulder? Call it. And it's so they are literally cut and dry. They are saying this is the rule, and it is black and white. Rugby, it's a lot greyer. It's interpretation of the law. Even if you were the one which goes, that's a bit unfair, you can see why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we watched Wales against France in the World Cup semi-final, in 2017? No. Was it
2011.
2011? What's that?
Wales
Blinking
versus
heck.
France.
I knew it was an odd number. I didn't know that long ago. And we all see Sam Warburton dropping, I can't remember who, of the French squad, gets the red card. At that moment, I'm pretty sure a few of the people I was watching it with were just like, was that a red? A yellow at most, and then that's interpretation.
And then all of a sudden he pulls out a red card.
Then, but when you look back now, it probably was a red card. He did drop him. He did go back into him.
And I guess perhaps that's where, like with offsides, for example, there needs to be a little bit more of
like no one's going back and looking at these offside decisions and going, well, they did get that one right at the end of the day. It's like no, everyone's going. Someone's been a bit done over there.
Yeah. Well, there we are. I think we'll leave you there for VAR because I feel like we could talk about VAR for ages, and everyone talks about VAR, don't they? So, should we move on slightly?
Let's do it.
We'll stick with football. So yeah, Chelsea are doing all right at the moment, aren't they? And they got a draw with Spurs on the weekend, who have been in properly good form,
and they're only 2 points off top.
Yeah, which is. But then it's such a bizarre season, isn't it? It's
Well, the best stat. Well, I'll be honest. To make up for the fact that I had 0 stacks last week, I have found 4 stats this week. And this is only the first of them, was the fact that Mendy has only started 6 of Chelsea's 10 games this season, and he already is the leader for clean sheets, which is just crazy. Like
that is quite impressive.
Yeah, everyone else has had a 4-game head start, and still they haven't managed to get as many clean sheets as him. But yeah, looking very solid at the back.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Chelsea is they'll start to build now, I think. Obviously, they had a lot of signings come in, didn't they?
Although they did flop in the second half of last year.
They did. It's not over by any stretch of the imagination, but as in, I feel like they're chugging along quite nicely. You feel like they could go up another gear or two.
Absolutely.
And Spurs still doing well. Got a result. It was very Mourinho-esque, wasn't it? Kind of get a draw against the good teams.
You've got to love it, haven't you? It's almost like he's pulling out all the cards this year, and he beat City. I mean, you think, if you were Spurs and you were looking at City, Chelsea back to back, you'd be going, we'll take a point. They're taking 4.
You would.
They've undefeated against the 2.
It's a good couple of weeks for Spurs, that.
Yeah.
So we'll see how they go. Liverpool somehow is still up there, just about. I don't know how.
I was saying that if Villa win their 2 games in hand, they go joint top, and they'll go ahead of Liverpool. Obviously that's a big if because it's 2 games. If Man United win their game in hand, they go just 2 points behind. I was saying it last week, Liverpool might not keep in the top 4.
Oh, right.
You never know.
Yeah, but on that basis, you could say, if Leeds win the 2 games in hand, they haven't got any games in hand. That's annoying.
City have got a game in hand. They got to 18 if they win theirs. I mean, there's a lot.
I'm just
Liverpool haven't got a huge buffer yet, considering they are. You know what I mean? When it started to go off the rails a little bit last year, you know what I mean? It wasn't as promising as the early stages of the season where they were dominating all the time. So it'd be interesting to see because I'm not saying it's gone off the wheels already, but I just think because they haven't got that keeper and they haven't got that defence quite ticking, it's like.
I mean, I think you could.
Obviously,
I mean, the keeper. I think the keeper's been okay, but I think it's just the sheer number of injuries that's kind of doing us over a bit at the moment, and as a result, we're not able to build. Yeah. Obviously, you're losing good players, but then you're also not able to build consistency.
Those defensive injuries, they're for the season, aren't they? Most part.
Well,
so
Joe Gomez will be for a long time, and Van Dijk is gone for the season, I think. So,
you know what I mean? Those are the ones which could come in important.
Well, I mean, look, perhaps I'm a bit sceptical, but as soon as Van Dijk got injured for Liverpool, I was looking at it, I was like, oh, this is going to be a... Well, to be fair, I will say this. At the start of the season, I said, based on what I've seen at the end of last season, this season is going to be a dogfight. Yeah. And I think it is. As in, like, you look at, you've got 10 games. Spurs are on 21 points, so they've dropped points. As in, Liverpool have dropped a lot of loss. That's Liverpool have dropped more points now than they had for pretty much all of last season. So, I don't know what the mathematics are of that. Maybe they haven't, but as in they've dropped a significant amount of points relative to this point last season. So there we are. Arsenal are struggling.
They are. Can we call them? Can we call them a mid-table club? Because they have not.
That's going to make a lot of Arsenal fans unhappy.
They've not battled for top 4 or for a while.
Did you hear what Roy Keane said about Arsenal?
No.
He said, he said, "Oh, I think they've got enough to stay up."
You gotta love that. That's proper wind-up merchant stuff.
That's wind-up merchant stuff from Roy Keane.
I was listening to Arsene Wenger's what's the Desert Island Discs? He was on Desert Island Discs.
Yeah.
And he was looking at the season. He said he doesn't see any team dominating this year the same way Liverpool did last year. He thinks it'll be a lot closer. But he thought Arsenal could end up in, having a good one. I think that was before this weekend's performance, because that was atrocious.
Yeah, not good.
Because Wolves hadn't scored a first half goal all season.
Wow.
Raul Jimenez goes off injured with a fractured skull after 6 minutes, and they go up against Arsenal 2-1 at half time. They hadn't scored a goal all season in the first half. Their top scorer goes off, and they still are able to score 2 goals on that Arsenal team.
Yeah.
Uncharacteristic.
I mean, the problem for Arsenal is as well, is it's not like they're defending well and they're not scoring. They're just not really...
They're not doing anything right.
They're not doing anything particularly well. And like when you look at the table, they're only like...
Well, they're on 14th. They're on 13 points.
Yeah.
They're 8 points off the bottom 3, and they are... they're only 5 off top 4. But still, you know what I mean? Wow, they're 5 off top 4, but saying that, they've played 10 games. There's 4 teams who've played... Well, 3 teams who've played 9 games, and 1 team that's played 8 games that are above them.
Yeah.
So if all of them win, they could be, 4 or 5 points off of top 4.
Yeah, I mean, it's still early days, isn't it? And we're still, we're not far through the season, but as in the early signs don't...
13 points from 10 games, that's not Arsenal of old.
No, it's not. It's really not. Another one who've kind of... A bit of a weird one, really, because I read this and I thought, gosh, I hadn't realised how on its head it had flipped. Everton. They'd looked really strong at the start of the season. So just for context, on the 25th of October, the table read Everton first, having played 6 with 13 points. Liverpool second with the same number of games played and points, but behind on goal difference. Then you had Villa, Leicester, Leeds and Southampton. Now again, obviously by this, we're still quite early on in the season, so the table's a little bit toxic, isn't it? As in, like, one win can like jump you 3 or 4 places. But a month later, Everton have only won 1 game, having played... Yeah, they've won 1 in 4.
Yeah. And then you consider Liverpool, who were on the same points as them, on 21, and was Everton 16. So Liverpool gained 5 points in just 4 games on them. It's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really slipping off the slope quick here.
Yeah, it's but it's just a bit of a weird one. It's almost like it's gone under the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's still very early on in the season. I would fully expect Everton to mount a bit of a, is it like, for example, Southampton are 5th right now? Yeah,
and they've just lost to United. Then it's like, well, anyone. To be honest, because you've got all those teams who've got a game in hand. I mean, you can't really assume that all of them are going to win them, but you know what I mean. Anyone could really be anywhere at the moment in that sort of Europa League section.
But I guess that one is kind of more significant because you can look at it 1 month difference. And the increase is only 3 points in 4 games.
Well, Everton could be 11th. If all of those 4 teams below them pick up at least a point, they could end up 11th.
That's crazy.
From 1st to 11th in 4 games is not great.
That's quite an extreme change. But there we are. We'll move on from the football for now. We'll move on to our shock of the week, which is a joint one, really.
It is.
Grosjean's crash.
It was enormous.
I have never seen it. So we'll segue from that into the Formula 1.
Yeah.
Should we come back to Grosjean's
Yeah, we'll come back to it.
Let's
just discuss it in the whole first, then go on to
it. We'll discuss it in the whole. So I was wondering if we could start off. There was a bit of a coverage on Sky Sports before the race. I don't know whether you saw it. About Mercedes' current car, the W11. And they said how, it's the fastest car in history, and obviously...
You'd expect it to be.
Yes. So that's what I was about to say.
With improvements, it's always going to get
quicker. It sounds like a drastic statement, but you kind of expect it, really, don't you? As the cars improve each year on year, the anticipation is really that the car should get quicker.
Yeah.
So for a bit of context, it was 5... They say on average it's about 5 seconds a lap quicker than Schumacher's 2004 Ferrari, which gives you a little bit of context as to how quick.
And that Schumacher's 2004 Ferrari is the same Ferrari being driven today by Leclerc and Vettel by their performances.
Yeah, the gap.
They
gap
got
is probably
torched.
about the same.
I mean, in one
Yeah.
lap, I think after the red flag incident, Leclerc had actually gained. I think he got all the way up to about.
Yeah.
He was in the top 10, I believe, and then within the space of 3 laps of that restart, I think he'd been overtaken by about 5 cars. It was ridiculous how bad that car is on the straights.
Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting because they said basically they think the next 2 seasons the cars are going to be slower.
Yeah,
now,
is that because of
obviously,
these new regulations?
well,
Is it?
but this is the thing. This is the interesting thing. So they said next year the cars aren't changing too much because obviously they've delayed the reg change, haven't they?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it was meant to be next season, but because of COVID, they've delayed it a season again.
Oh, so does that mean we're just going to get another year of Mercedes dominance?
Potentially, yeah. But as in, there are going to be slight changes, and they're aerodynamic ones, though, I think. So they said the cars are going to be slower next year. But then what I was surprised at is for 2022, they said the cars are going to be slower as well. And
But do they think that would be
always
like
find-
teething problems with the new regulations?
well, no, they just said because of the way the cars, like in terms of aerodynamics and the restrictions, the cars just won't be able to go as fast. But I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but in a sport where it's all focused about on like eking out like every millisecond you can on pit stops and going as fast as you can, like I don't understand why the FIA kind of, in order to increase competition, they slow cars down. Do you not think they should be encouraging like the not so good teams, like like for example like with the Premier League where they do the parachute payments?
Yeah.
Like when a team gets relegated, they get a load of money. Basically, in the idea is that they kind of bounce back up a little bit.
Yeah.
But why is it that like Formula One almost goes the other way and says, oh well, we'll slow everyone up so that everyone can kind of compete together?
I guess because when you slow them all up, does the technical ability of the driver, is that more on display? Would you say? Would you? Yeah.
I mean, I guess in terms of if you're changing the aerodynamics, I mean, you can't go around corners as fast and you've got less grip. So I suppose you are kind of, it's potentially more about driver ability.
Which is kind of what you want to see, but...
Yeah, I guess so.
To be honest, also, if you slow the cars down, we get more laps. Or we get more time on track. So you get longer weekends, aren't you? That's what they're thinking. Yeah. They're thinking, well, these weekends aren't long enough. Slow them down.
But, I mean,
why don't they just chuck them all in Fiat 500s and say, go at it. 70 laps, Silverstone, go. That's what you want to see.
I find it a little bit weird, to be honest. I'm not sure how I feel about it. There we are. Perhaps I'm the only one who thinks that, but I think...
What was interesting, though, when you were talking about the scraping out every millisecond from all these aerodynamic changes, interesting, they were talking quite a lot on the coverage this weekend about... the Mercedes cars not being as good in traffic as they were at the front. And they were saying how the engineers and the designers of these cars, they designed them to be at the front. And if you're at the front, that is the optimum aero package, or not package, but
situation.
Design. Yeah, that is what the car is meant for. But if everyone's doing that, what's the point in Haas and Alfa Romeo designing a car for that? They should be designing cars that are better in the dirty air, because most cars will be in dirty air for 90% of a race. It just is the nature of Formula One.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is, though, is that Mercedes are in a position where they're so dominant.
To be fair, Mercedes is probably the only car that can get away with that.
Yes. Well, I think they're the only team that do build a car for that situation. As in most other teams, like, for example, you probably don't see Red Bull doing that.
Do you not think?
No. As in, I think... when you look at all of the teams, I think Mercedes are probably the only team that basically just go, right, we're going to build the fastest car and hedge our bets on us getting pole and second, which means that we're not having to run in dirty air. Because it was the same in Monza, if you remember. Like, you'd see, like Hamilton, because Hamilton obviously had that penalty, didn't he? So he ended up at the back of the grid.
Yeah. And he did dominate that one.
Yeah, but like, you'd see him, like, he'd be going down the straight... and normally where you'd be seeing cars just sitting in the slipstream to just gain as much time as possible, Hamilton was having to pull out because the car just couldn't deal with the dirty air.
Car was overheating quite badly as well,
yes,
wasn't it?
Definitely.
Really just didn't design a car for that sort of situation.
Just didn't do it. Yeah, it just can't deal with the...
Do you think that's a bit risky, though? Like, what happens if, Ferrari go, you know what, we actually have got one of those good engines again? And it's like, if Mercedes aren't first and they're starting to go second, all that's going to happen is they get slower and slower, and then it's only a matter of time before the Red Bull overtakes them.
Well, I mean, that's the risk they take, isn't it? But let's be fair, they've done that pretty much every race so far, and apart from the odd blip, it's worked out okay, isn't it?
True.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting relating to the 2022 cars.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see what happens. But I guess the fundamental is, if it leads to more competitive racing, I suppose perhaps from a... Because I guess in a weird sense, I like cars. So in my head, I kind of think, well, you want the cars to be as good as possible. But I think if you're just talking about the sporting aspect, there is an element to which you really just want good racing, don't you?
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, I'm a massive Hamilton fanboy, but even I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, Lewis, just let someone else win.
Yeah.
Just for once. Like, you've won your championship, you've won your 7 titles. Like, there were like 3 or 4 races left. Could you not just let someone else compete and win?
That would be cool, wouldn't it? If they just said, you know what, we'll award you these titles now, but can we just not have your car because it's too good? Like, you know what I mean? You want to see everybody... I'd love to see every race, because in a sense, obviously people are still driving for position and they want to get on the podium and get points on that. But if you had every race and you didn't have those Mercs at the front, you're not guaranteed that the Red Bulls... I mean, Max Verstappen actually probably would end up winning every race, but if he has any form of technical problem, it's only him. After that, open market, anyone could win a race. And then it's like, oh man, this is as entertaining as it gets.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw an interesting table actually, and they said if this was the race for the title, then it had from like 4th downwards.
Yeah,
and you had like 4 or 5 drivers within like a couple of points of each other.
You've got Danny Rick and Leclerc always like a point apart pretty much all season.
Yeah.
You've got both of the McLarens that are always really close to each other. Decent team, and then you've got other guys like Perez and Stroll and Gasly who just seem to have one race wonder and the next one a bit of a dip.
So the way I see it is, if Lewis can get his 8th title next year and then roll on 2022, that's the way I see it as a Lewis Hamilton fan and a Formula 1 fan. But there we are. Right, we'll talk about it now. Grosjean's crash.
Oh,
honestly, that I was
when it happened.
Shocking. It was absolutely shocking.
When it happened and you saw that, I just thought, someone's died. There wasn't
instantly
a hope in my head that... Well, maybe not the wrong words, but there was not a thought in my head that some...
wasn't a hope.
Yeah. Oh, I'm hoping...
Choice of words.
No.
I
did not think for a fraction of a second that someone is getting pulled out of that, because
it was almost like
huge.
Yeah, it was almost like an involuntary, like, emotional response. It was like, we've just seen someone die in the car.
And they didn't show, for good reason, they didn't show the footage for a while. Because you did not know what was going on.
Well, Ross, I read an article today and they said that Ross Brawn said apparently the I don't know whether it's a regulation or it's just something that they do, that basically until they know the driver is out
smart.
of the car and they don't show anything. So, but yeah, almost that weight made it worse, didn't it? Because you didn't know what was going on.
Danny Rick was saying that, because it was obviously a 45-minute break
delay
until they managed to get a new wall put in, but he was saying that it was cruel of them to play that in that 45-minute slot for as long as they did. Because he was saying it, for them it's entertainment, but for the fans, for fans it's entertainment, because you're like, it's good that he's gotten out, but whoa, what an impressive thing to see. But he was like, that's playing on the emotional heartstrings of all those drivers who now got to sort of suck it up and go, right, we're going to go back out there and pretty much do an entire race, knowing that could be us.
Yeah, but I mean, I can see where Daniel Ricciardo... I can see where he's coming from. What he's saying makes sense. Obviously, I'm not a Formula 1 driver. I have no idea. But as in what he's saying is very logical. But, I think... You
can't really blame him for showing it. It's probably the most impressive explosion I think I've ever seen. It was like something out of Star Wars.
Someone said it looked like... that you could have taken that footage and put it in the film Rush, and it wouldn't have looked out of place. It looked like something from a movie, like the way he kind of like jumped out of the flames, and people were like diving into. It was mental. I've watched Formula 1 now, probably. I think it was when Kimi Räikkönen won his first title. So 2007. I say his first title, his only title. 2007. I've watched. So what's that? That's 13 years. I'm pretty sure my brother has watched it for even longer, and he said the same thing. Never have I seen anything like that. Not necessarily. I remember when I think it was Canada, maybe like 2008 to 2009. Robert Kubica had a pretty nasty crash. the front wing of his car, I think, kind of got tucked under the nose, which kind of like arrowed the car upwards. He hit the wall.
Which wall?
Like the right-hand wall. You know, as you come into the hairpin?
Yeah.
So he kind of went up, hit the wall on the right,
all right.
Rotated in mid-air, and then smashed into the wall on the left. He came back across the track.
Flip.
Now, but and that was a pretty huge crash. But I mean, the big difference was like with Kubica's, like there was just debris everywhere. As in, the car was just obliterated. But the monocoque stayed intact, and very very much like Grosjean's actually. But because the monocoque and the rest of the car all stayed together, it was a nasty crash. But as in, he was very much protected. I mean, I guess he didn't have the halo though, so that could have been a lot worse.
Oh, that's what they've been. Pretty much that's today's top story is how amazing is it that they had that halo. Grosjean said himself he wasn't for it, and a lot of them were saying it's an ugly piece to go onto the car, and it was, he didn't want it. And
I mean, I think it pretty much ends the debate, doesn't it?
It does,
about the halo for me.
100%.
As in, Romain Grosjean. I think it's as simple as if the halo wasn't there, he'd be dead.
Well, the stats were he hit that barrier at 137 miles per hour, 53 G's of force, instantly taken out. Good thing that was a metal barrier, because if that was a brick one, I mean, I was talking to someone and they said if it was a brick one, he'd have just slid along it. I don't think he would have slid along it because he was going head on at that thing. There's no deviation. If it wasn't metal, that's not going to take any of the force out of that.
Is it not to do with how the energy is dissipated throughout the car, though? Because I think I remember reading that they said the whole purpose of the car is that basically, as soon as there's impact, the idea is that all of the body basically just obliterates, and then the energy is dispersed that way. So it's dispersed, basically away from the drive. I get what you're saying.
But yeah, either way, I think I'd much rather be crashing into that metal than into a concrete, because if you're doing the metal, it's absorbing a little bit itself. It's bending. If it's concrete, those ribs are just going to get properly hit.
But then I think, I guess this is kind of related to what Karen Chanduk said about, he said on the coverage on Sky, he said, one of the great fearful unknowns for Formula One is like fire, because they said, with G's and things like that, they can kind of calculate, well, if a car hits at this angle, at this speed, this is the amount of G, blah, blah, blah. Whereas fire, there's no way to tell, like, where's it going to start? How hot is it going to be? Yeah. How long is it going to burn for?
It's a blessing he wasn't knocked unconscious. He was in there for 20 seconds, consciously, and he was saying on the coverage that they practiced to get out in 10 seconds. So he was sat in there for 20 seconds trying to unstrap and get over that wall. And it was like, if he's unconscious, you've got all of those guys getting out the cars, to put out the fire and all that. They haven't got the same helmets. They've got open mask one. So you know what I mean? They can't walk into that fire. They will burn their face to a crisp.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously the impact was huge, but it was just the explosion.
Yeah.
And it was because the angle that they showed it on the screen, wasn't it? That it was the cars were coming towards the screen.
So you don't see anything because the way the barrier was, you couldn't see it.
And you almost didn't see him fly off because it happened so quickly, and then all of a sudden you just saw this massive plume of flames, and you thought, "Oh my word, wow!" And like I said, I'd never seen anything like that in Formula One, and I know that I think they said one of the last times they had a fire was Gerhard Berger in Imola in '89.
Yeah, I found,
and you've done some other stats here, haven't you?
Yeah, BBC put it out. They said the last time an F1 car split in two was Monaco 1991. The last time one caught fire in a crash was at Imola 1989, like you said. And you have to go back to 1970s to find an accident where the car pierced barriers in that such a way. And on both occasions, in Watkins Glen in the USA, in 73 and 74, the drivers both were killed.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. That's what this. All of well, if anything, what can come away from the accident is it's a success for the FIA with all of the safety regulations they put in. The halo, the fire extinguishers inside of the car, the harnesses that stop him just flying out the front of it. All of those sort of things put together. The 4 layers of... I mean, Bottas was complaining about it when they were in... they were somewhere earlier in the season. He said he's just too hot inside of it. It might have been Silverstone, actually, when the tyres were burning out. He said he's just too hot inside. But good thing they have him on, because you're going into an inferno like that, you are not coming out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, like you said, I think the thing that will concern the FIA, I think it'll be 2 things. It'll be...
Why did the car
barrier? I think it'll be a couple of things. I think why the car has pierced the barrier, because a car should never go through a barrier. Now, whether you think the metal barrier or the concrete barrier is better, a car should never go in between a barrier, because that's putting the driver, it's putting their head at risk. The second thing, how the car, it's not just the fact that the car split into, it's the fact that it did it almost instantly. And I guess in some sense it's a bit of an unfortunate one because of the angle he's hitting the wall at, and it's such speed, isn't it? You know, there's almost no glancing off it. He's literally just spearing towards it.
Like, some people go, why weren't there tyre barriers there? But you couldn't have at all expected someone to crash there. Like, where it is, for those who haven't seen, go watch it. It was insane, like, how this thing happened. But it was just after the hairpin. Then there's a sort of a sweeping left, and then it's sort of a mini right, and then it's just straight. And it was on the straight where basically Grosjean was quicker than the two guys in front of him, so he starts to veer to the right to get past, to go round them. He doesn't see Kvyat, who's pretty much halfway alongside him. So as he's gone to the right, Kvyat's obviously still there. It means he's sort of getting spun by Kvyat slightly, but it was just enough that he didn't spin him enough that he just span on the track. He only span him slightly, so it just completely diverted his course, and then he's going head on into
it would have been almost better if he'd spun him completely. But basically what he did was just hit him enough that the car kind of jumped, but then it gripped up again and just flew.
You're going that quick, you can't turn.
And I guess the other thing they'll be concerned about is the fact that it's the fire. As in, Formula 1 car should never be doing that. As in, like we said, the last time we saw a fire was 1989. Well, I'm not being funny. You're talking nearly that's 31 years ago now. So I think that'll be the thing that, to be fair, there are. I want to say it's unusual circumstances, but I guess the argument could be, well, it's not like it's wet or there's been a component failure, and it's a racing incident. So I guess, I get what you're saying about the barriers, but I think now they're probably going to have to look at these sort of things and go, well, if that's the potential, because I think there was a thinking that perhaps these sort of car fires are gone from Formula 1, and that we weren't going to see them again. But all of a sudden, bang, it's thrust right back into the picture, and I think now this is something that, in a weird way, it's almost like it's a wake-up call, isn't it? As in, it doesn't matter how many precautions and safety measures and halo and fire suits and all these sort of things. At the end of the day, motorsport is men driving or women going very quickly in motor vehicles, and there's always a risk to that.
Yeah, agreed. That's why they paid such an enormous amount of money. It's because that you might not be coming out of that race alive every single time.
Because you put a quote here from Christian Horner, haven't you?
Yeah, he was kind of just saying how, he survived it because of the car, the safety cell, the halo, the fireproof overall, the belt, hand system, the extraction, the FIA crew being there within seconds, guys fiercely going in to extract him from the car. He was saying that was the biggest result of the day. To be fair, he could have started, blowing the horn of Verstappen, saying how, we got second. 'Cause that's a good performance for them, you know what I mean? Beat Bottas. But no, first thought for most people was, Grosjean's out there alive because of all the safety measures they put in place.
Yeah, definitely.
Should we move on?
Yeah, so, but just before we say, good job. We're happy that Grosjean's well.
Yeah.
Probably never going to hear this, but that's, like you said, that's the big success of the day, isn't it? There we are.
Do you think that's him retired now?
I think it will be, because, he's only got...
he's going to lose his seat
races,
anyway. Yeah, and
he's
obviously not going to come back. I just wasn't sure. Do you think he'd come back?
The thing is, as well, as in, regardless of the injuries he's got, I would not blame him for not wanting to get back in that car.
Yeah,
I really wouldn't. As in,
that horse is rubbish, isn't it? No,
no. I was thinking more about the fact how he nearly died in a ball of flames. But there we are. Right. We'll move on to slightly more cheery stuff. Highlight of the week.
My highlight of the week was Tyreek Hill for the Kansas City Chiefs, absolutely ruining Tampa Bay in one quarter. I got the stats lower down. I'll come back to them later. But in one quarter, he had 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. And for reference, a 100-yard game over 4 quarters is very good.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I was going to say that for my highlight of the week, but I thought we can't both have the same shock and the same highlight. So there we are. But yeah, it was a cracking game.
Oh, I enjoyed
and like
it.
you said, Tyreek Hill just... when you're able to backflip into the touchdown area...
Oh, he was wandering on some of them. He's so quick that he just has all the time in the world when he gets up there.
Yeah, absolutely flying. My highlight was, as of like 5 minutes before recording this, Leicester 1, Fulham 2. Fulham have won.
Is that their first win of the season?
That's a very good question. Let's have a look at the table you put in the notes.
It doesn't have the wins on there. I just looked.
Well, yeah, but they've got 4 points. So you'd assume at
yeah.
some point they've won somewhere along the line. But yeah, it's a big result for Fulham, that. And also slightly disappointing for Leicester, because that's their game in hand gone.
That's the second win of the season. Only Sheffield United haven't won now. Just checked.
Wow. And we'll be mentioning Sheffield United later. So
absolutely.
Watch this space. Right. NFL. We haven't talked a lot about NFL so far.
No. I've avoided it for some of my things. Didn't think the audience would be, as reciprocating of it as I am. But I've heard to the contrary, people want to hear it.
Well, I mean, look, it's a different sport, isn't it? It's interesting to hear about. It's better than just talking about VAR all the time.
Amen.
So, I'm not going to pretend that I know a massive amount about the NFL. I do follow it. I do enjoy watching it.
Mm-hmm.
You've been following it longer than I have.
Yeah, not too much longer. It's quite easy to get into.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a very interesting game, and because it's basically, I would say it's one of the good ones. If you like watching sport in general, watching the NFL is good because it's play by play. You can kind
of
of
incorporate so many different things. Like
yes.
It's got literally an offensive team, literally a defensive team, literally a special teams, and it's like obviously people can go, you look at like Tottenham and Jose Mourinho's Tottenham, and it's like it's all defense. They don't go to win games, they just go to not lose them and all that. But it's like when you got a sport like the NFL, it's like you can't have teams. Well, you can to some extent, teams that are just loaded on one side, but in most cases you're bad at something, so it means somebody's going to exploit you in some way.
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of what you're saying, but it's compartmentalised in a very nice way, isn't it? Because you kind of have like play, and then you have a mini break, and then you have another play, and then a mini break. You can kind of absorb it quite well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are quite long games.
They are, but at the same time, you can be in them for longer. Like,
yes,
you're never out of it.
No. It's definitely worth the watch. If you've not watched the NFL, we're promoting it.
We are.
Right, nitty gritty. You've put about the Broncos.
Yeah, so crazy.
Game with the Saints coming up.
No, not coming up. It was on Sunday. It was, and
was it?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
What was interesting was Jeff Driscoll, who is the Denver Broncos' second quarterback, so the one who doesn't play. He only plays if the first one's injured.
Yeah.
He got COVID, and as a result, if you are close contact with him and you aren't wearing a mask, you have to isolate for 5 days. And all three of the Denver Broncos' other quarterbacks were also close contact with him, and none of them were wearing a mask for roughly 4 minutes. So it wasn't a long period of time, but the NFL said on its mandate, you have to wear a mask. If you are close contact, you're 5 days.
Isn't it? Because do you know what? I remember now why I thought this game was coming up, because they were talking about it on the coverage of the Chiefs game, and they said that the NFL were basically adamant that they were going to play this game regardless.
Yeah.
Because they basically said, why have you been so stupid to have them all in like the same place at the same time, basically.
Yeah.
What was the result in that game?
They got hammered.
Well, the Broncos,
They scored 3 points, and the Saints scored something like 20 odd. No, I think it's about the same. I think it was the same as the Chiefs. I think it was 27. So, and for context as well, would I be right in saying, like, if you're comparing in terms of like specialty of position, it would be like a football team basically losing all 4 of their goalkeepers, right? Yeah,
basically.
Kind of. The thing is, what's a little bit different is with goalkeeper, anyone, you know what I mean? You don't have to know anything. You just got to know you can use your hands. Whilst when you're playing quarterback, you have to know the entire playbook. You've got to know every little piece of lingo because every single word is key. and you've got to be out there communicating with another 10 people, telling them all what you're doing.
It's it's not just about having a big throw.
And you've got to make adjustments all the time. You've got to know, okay, this is what I'm looking at. Let's change this, lads. But what they did on the weekend, they had a rookie wide receiver who was on their practice squad, so not even a member of the team. He was their quarterback for the day. Mostly they were just using running backs instead, like 2 of them, and playing that, because you always play for running back. But basically, no one's out there being able to read a defense because no one's ever trained to. They're always told by the quarterback what to do. You know what I mean?
Dear.
So if they were meant to run to the right, and the quarterback goes, he notices it's going to go to the right, he'd tell him, we're going to run to the left then, we're going to counteract it. But obviously, no one playing knew how to read the other team. So it was like, whatever the guy says in his ear, he's got to go with it. And it's just ride or die with it for the whole game.
So who actually played a quarterback?
4 people. There was that wide receiver, the practice squad one, who kind of took reps. He was 0-9 for passing, so he didn't make a single pass.
Wow.
For the first... I think he didn't get a successful pass away until the 3rd quarter, and he was intercepted before then. But to be fair, I mean, they were saying, they came out of it and said, yeah, there's a game, and we lost big time, but, it is what it is. And big up to that guy, because no one would have wanted to be the quarterback in that game.
Well, yeah, I mean, there must have been an acceptance. As soon as you're going onto a field without a quarterback... Yeah. You're gonna struggle. Well,
and the thing is,
it's one of the most specialised positions, surely.
You can't. It's not like football where you can just bring in a goalkeeper. You can't just bring in a quarterback to play because they don't know what they're doing. Like they've got to know the playbook.
It's not like in football where you can basically see, right, be a body. Yeah. Whoever's in front of you, stop them. Yeah. Whereas the quarterback, it's quite a proactive position, isn't it? You've got to be hitting your throws, making sure that you're not intercepted, making sure that you don't get sacked. As in, there's a lot of stuff going on there at quarterback. Oh, poor Broncos. Well, it can only get better, eh?
They're not a particularly good team either way.
So what you're saying is they could have had all 4 of those quarterbacks.
To be fair, they probably would have lost to the Saints regardless, because the Saints are a very good team.
Yeah.
But
there's no shame in losing to the Saints, even when you've got a full-strength side.
No.
But there we are. Right.
I tell you what, actually, something else that was funny. They asked the NFL if they could play one of their... assistant coaches at quarterback, because obviously they know the quarterback book because they're the ones telling him to do it. So they were saying, can one of these lads do it? Because one of them, a lot of the NFL coaches used to play at some point. That's kind of how you get into it. So I think there was one of them who had played quarterback in college or something, like, but 2 decades ago. But the NFL said, no. No, you can't do it. And it's almost like, come on, what are they going to do? It's like they're losing anyway. It's like... Yeah.
Could you imagine the scenes, though? Like, Chelsea start losing in football and they lose all of their central midfielders and they're like, FA, do you mind if we put Frank in? Yeah, chuck him in midfield?
Come back. It's like, no, you can't.
There we are. Right. You've put some notes here about...
Well, I just wondered, do you think that's the right approach, though? To the COVID, it's like someone gets it and then that's sort of the... Because, I mean, you hear loads about the NFL getting COVID positive tests. I mean, the Ravens got loads this week, but to be fair, the NFL tests an awful lot of people. So I did the numbers, and the NFL has done 645,000 tests over this season.
So I'm guessing that's a repeat of lots of people all the time, right? Yeah.
Whilst the Premier League's only done 18,633. And the Premier League's had 76 positives, the NFL's had 270. And obviously, it's 0.41% of people were positive in the Prem and 0.042 in the NFL. So it looks like a much smaller number, but when you consider for players, one player can mean quite a lot for an NFL team. Whilst when you go to the Premier League, I mean, Mane, Salah, Thiago, a few of the Liverpool lads have had it. I'm not saying they gave it to each other because they were quite a big distance amount of time.
Yeah.
But do you think the Premier League should say, you know what, we're gonna curb, or we're gonna act a little bit differently to try and limit these cases?
I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Because when you look at, in the grand scheme of things, not many footballers. In the Premier League now I'm talking, not many have had it. Like, when I think about it, Liverpool are probably... Would they be one of the worst hit teams? Probably. When you think about it, Salah's had it, Mane's had it, Thiago's had it.
I don't know who else on that team's had it. Cause,
I'm sure I remember somebody else having it, potentially. Did Naby Keita have it? Maybe. No, I think he's just injured. But as in, I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? I mean, I guess.
I mean, the NFL's out there taking draft picks off of teams, fining them, all sorts. But the Premier League does not seem as bothered.
Yeah, I mean, do you think this is perhaps a problem with the Premier League as a body rather than the clubs? Because I think I'd probably be right in saying is that the Premier League as an organisation is known for being rather financially orientated. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I give you that.
So perhaps they're kind of looking at it and going, well, yeah, the more tests we do, the more, teams are going to have people who are positive, and that's not good for competitive football.
Do you think they're potentially under testing just to make sure the numbers don't come out?
I wouldn't say under testing, but I don't think they're being liberal with it.
Okay, that's interesting.
Well, you just have to look at those numbers there. As in, how many teams do you have in the NFL?
32.
32, okay. So you're going to have more tests in the NFL than the Premier League, is purely on the basis of.
And when you consider
number of teams.
It's 11 players who make the first team, and then you've got about, another 10 or so to make up a team in the Premier League, whilst the NFL, you've got a squad of about 60 going to games, and then you've got about, maybe twice as many of that just in coaches in the facility. It's a much, each team is much bigger in the NFL than it is in the Premier League, so
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a bit of a tricky one, really. I mean, I guess the thing that you've got to remember with the NFL as well is that they are basically travelling like huge distances to play games.
They aren't doing COVID like, you know what I mean? America doesn't care for it. There's no lockdown. Like
restrictions. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the only thing, actually, interestingly, this was actually today they announced it, was Santa Clara, which is where the San Francisco 49ers play. That state or area is not allowing contact sport for 3 weeks. So they've actually had to move their home games to Arizona to play for the next... Because they've got 2 home games in that period. But, yeah, just interesting that's probably the first time any sort of government-enforced rule has affected the NFL. Whilst when you see the Premier League and it's like... I mean, the NFL's been having about 30,000 people at each game. And they've got, the America's got so many more cases than, we do in the UK. So, and we're only allowing 2,000 people for half of the teams.
Perhaps I'm just being a little bit naive and thinking, as in like the NFL, just sheerly on the higher number of people, you're probably just going to have to do more testing as it is.
Yeah.
Although that difference does seem rather drastic. But there we are. Perhaps that's me with my tinfoil hat on. We'll see how we get on. Right, moving on to the Steelers.
Yeah, they are
10-0.
10-0, which only undefeated team remaining. But I don't think they're that good.
Oh boy!
Well, this 10-0 record, they've had
any Steelers fans out there? He said that, not me.
They've had the second easiest strength of schedule. What that is because it doesn't work like Premier League or football in general, where it's points based. Instead, the NFL just works on your record, the amount of wins compared to how many losses you've got. So, for instance, if your team is currently 5-5, your record is 500 in a sense, or 0.5, because it's out. Basically, it's like 100% down to 0%.
Yeah,
it looks like that basically. So the Steelers actually have had the second easiest strength of schedule. So the average win percentage of all of the teams they've played is the second easiest so far this season. They've only played 3 teams with a winning record, and one of them was after... I think they've played a few of them. No, ignore that point. No, I was going to say that was incorrect. But also, they've played the NFC East, which is the absolute whipping boys of the NFL at the moment.
Now, do you know what? It's interesting. I was discussing this with my brother yesterday, and you've got... So in the NFC East, you've got the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Giants, and the Washington football team, right?
Yep.
Now, I'm pretty sure that he said, they had a friend who was, supported one of those teams. I can't remember. It might have been the Washington football team, potentially, or the Giants, maybe. I think it was the Giants. and they basically said like if they have a season where they're like 8-8, they are happy.
Yeah.
That's a good season.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got the Steelers who are currently 10-0. Like,
Yeah.
that's as in the NFC East is like the only team where you could probably get into the playoff with a negative record.
Yeah. That is going to end up happening this season.
Yeah,
Their combined
definitely.
record against teams that, so obviously they play each other twice, but their combined record, all 4 teams' records combined against all other teams that they've played this season, because you don't play everyone every season. You only play a certain, it's an algorithm of which teams you'll play. And their record against what they've played, 25 other teams, and their record is 5 wins, 19 losses, and 1 draw. Draws are very rare, but 5, 19, and 1 against all other teams. That is shocking.
That's combined now.
That's combined.
So between 4 teams, they have 5 wins.
Can I say, 3 of those? Oh, is it 2? No, 2. It's 2 of those. No. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, only 2 of those wins are for the Giants, and they're probably the worst of the 4 of them. So I don't know how they've been the one to.
Yeah, because didn't the Giants win yesterday? Didn't they? They beat the Bengals.
Yeah, they're on a 3-game winning streak.
Just saying that touchdown for the Bengals in that game from the kick return. Did you see that?
I think you know what? I caught the second half of the run. I caught it,
Honestly,
and I noticed it. I was like,
it was like 102 yards. I think they said.
Nice. You gotta love one of them. But that's the thing.
It was insane.
They're winning a game on a special teams play, which is like they don't happen very often, and it's like so they're clambering away lucky wins basically.
That's another reason to watch the NFL, because you get big moments in NFL, and you're like, whoa, that was huge.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So
yeah,
they said you said
couldn't believe they're getting a lot of hype for being a 10-0 team, but they've actually had a very easy run at it so far this season.
And you said they played the Ravens. Was that this weekend just gone?
No, they're about to play the Ravens. Not today, but they're supposedly tomorrow.
Right.
But the Ravens have got 22 players with COVID.
And I was about to say one of them is Lamar Jackson, isn't it?
So they've even got their quarterback.
He was he was the MVP last year as well, wasn't he?
I mean, I don't think he's that good. I don't think he's that special. But,
oh, boy. But he's a good player, though, isn't he? You can't argue that
he's better than most quarterbacks. But
yes.
Yeah.
He's no Pat Mahomes.
He's no Pat Mahomes.
But yeah, as in that's a big loss for the Ravens, that.
Yeah.
So, basically, I think what we're saying is you can assume that that's going to be 11-0.
Yeah.
Based purely
purely
on the basis of the number of players they've lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You're losing 22 players.
Basically, you don't really get the full picture from the Steelers. It looks like an unbeatable record, but when you take into account, well, you just in contrast, you got to look at the Chiefs, and they've played much more difficult teams, right?
Well, the Steelers finished second in their division last year, and what that means is they'll play the other teams in the AFC who also finished second, whilst the Chiefs finished first in their division last year, so it means they played all the other teams that also finished first. So the Chiefs have had a much more difficult schedule. Also, the Chiefs are playing the NFC, the Chiefs division's playing the NFC South, and they've potentially got 2, they always have at least 2 teams that are battling it out for the conference title there. So, there's the Chiefs' schedules.
Who's in that? Who's in the NFC South?
The Saints. They've got the Carolina Panthers, who aren't as good this year.
No.
But they did play them with Christian McCaffrey, who is their very good running back. Probably the best in the league, I'd say. But they have the Atlanta Falcons, who are a bit like, if you're trying to make a football comparison, a bit like a Liverpool team of old, where they could lose to a really bad team, but they could also beat someone really good.
An upset. Yeah.
Really bizarre team. And then the other one has escaped my mind. It's not coming to me.
I can never remember with the leagues.
Falcons?
It's not the Buccaneers.
It is the Buccaneers, who the Chiefs just dominated. And the thing is,
segue onto the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Chiefs did just dominate them. And you know what? That makes them 9-1. That's a beautiful segue.
See what I did there?
Yeah.
It's not the Buccaneers, is it?
It is the Buccaneers.
We're getting good at this.
Yeah.
We're 4 weeks in and we're doing segues. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Chiefs.
Absolutely dominant. The second highest scoring team, only by 1 point they are behind. So basically top scoring, but you're not going to, I can't say it.
If you round up.
By 1 point they are second. Okay. Sixth best for defensive points allowed. So they're, sixth best for that. What was another one of my favourite stats that I've read this week is that, going into this week, I think Kelsey, he was in the top 3 for yards, for receiving yards for the season.
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek Hill had such a monster day yesterday that now the number 1 and number 2 players with the most receiving yards this season both play for the Chiefs, which is nuts. No other team will have a second guy anywhere near the top. But the fact we got number 1 and 2, that's pretty impressive.
That's to be fair. Like Hill was good yesterday, to be fair, but Kelsey was also mightily impressive.
Well, Hill's 200 yards in 1 quarter makes him only the 3rd player to do it in 30 years. And Mahomes had the most passing yards, passing yards in the league, and he had the most in the first half of the game for 20 years. So just crazy records they are matching and breaking at the moment.
And am I right in saying I may have misheard this wrong? Sorry, no, I may have misheard this in the game yesterday, but they said something along the lines of like because of a certain statistic, Mahomes' stats weren't like official or something. Yeah,
so to there's certain records such as like your passer rating, which is like a strange. I don't know how they work that out. But yards per game, yards per attempt, stuff like that. You can't obviously because some players, they'll play 10 games and they're new to the league, so no one's quite figured them out. So in a sense, they might have some really good stats on a per play basis or per game basis. So what the NFL introduced to make sure that you're not just sort of getting a little bit, the stats aren't getting abused in some way. They said you have to make 1,500 1,500 attempts, passing attempts, before you could be registered onto these things.
So basically, you don't throw like one pass. 100% succession. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because they said basically Mahomes is now officially one of the best as of yesterday. He was kind of the best.
He was the best in 3 categories and second in another, and they were all important categories. So it was like, he's pretty special.
Yeah, he's. It was just such a good game yesterday. It was, and I think the thing that's improved with Mahomes, I don't know. I feel like he's just become a little bit more efficient. I think sometimes he'd hold the ball a bit too long.
Yeah.
But like now he just like there were a couple of times yesterday, and I, to be fair, I can't claim this point fully to myself. I was discussing it with my brother, but he said that like there are times now where in the past Mahomes would have kind of held it and then possibly tried to go really long. He now just kind of right out bang hits Kelsey for like 5 yards. Just like chips away at it. A bit more sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, which is what you need to do, I think.
That's the thing. He needs to get into a flow. Like quite often, you'll find the first 2 or 3 possessions of the game that he's almost trying to score the world-beating touchdown there and then. He wants the highlight play, and then he can play his normal game after that. And that's when you'll find he won't score for the first few possessions, and then the other team gets a little bit of a lead, and then he's like, oh, actually, I do have to start playing properly. But he seems a lot more composed this year, whereas he's going...
Yeah, composure's a good word.
Yeah, he's sort of just picking... like he was saying, because Tyreek Hill had a crazy game. I mean, for people who don't know, he is insanely fast. He's like Olympic speed fast, even though he's wearing
crazy fast.
So much protection on him.
Gear, but then he's like really short as well. Like he's like a whippet.
And they were saying basically they weren't the defense wasn't playing anyone deep, and he's so quick that he was just like, well, not many teams play this way against us, and this definitely plays into our hands. Which is why Tyreek Hill was just literally just bombing it up the sideline, going and Mahomes, he's got the most strong arm in the league, and he's just launching these everywhere, and it was just touchdown. It was nuts how fast and the thing is, and then it plays into their hands because the other team's scared. They know they're going to get beaten by the pace. So what do? They have 3 men sitting all the way deep to stop against the really deep ball, and then you got Travis Kelce coming up as a tight end under the inside, and it's like, no one's on me because they're all back deep. So
it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It's so hard to cover both.
If you pick up one, you're less likely to pick up the other.
And the thing is, it's not just them 2.
No,
it's about 3 or 4 others that could be number 1 wide receivers at other teams, and the Chiefs are just like.
And now that we've got Edwards-Helaire and Bell, is in that's a fairly good combo for running back. Edwards-Helaire is a player. But as in, yeah, it's and I guess that's the point, isn't it? As in, perhaps before, Mahomes would be perhaps more keen to try and pick out Tyreek Hill, as you would as a quarterback, I'd imagine. Now he's perhaps being a bit more efficient and going, right, well, Tyreek is marked out there, let's just pick out Kelsey for 5 yards or 2 yards, or just kind of chipping away at it. But yeah, very impressive game. Without wanting to sound, just in case anyone is listening, me and Jack are both Chiefs fans.
Yeah, although
so if you're thinking,
I was before they were amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
you to be fair, you only chose them because you like the colour as well, so that's fair enough. Was it the colour? Or was it, I can remember. It was a perfectly legitimate reason, but
It was
I was
something
there
like that, yeah.
when Mahomes wasn't even in the team, and I was
You were grafting, yeah.
I'm loving life right now.
Yeah.
It's like supporting Barcelona before Messi, but if they weren't good, but they were back then as well. Well, it kind of raises the question though: is there another team that quite dominates in the same manner that the Chiefs have been?
Ooh, what, in sport or in just the NFL?
In sport.
That's a very bold statement.
Well, you could probably look at that Chiefs team and think they'll be in the Super Bowl or close to it for the next 4 years at least. I mean, before you start got to pay everybody, because the NFL has a salary cap, which means that you can't you can't just pay everybody whatever you want, because otherwise teams like the Dallas Cowboys, who are like the most famous team in America, they'd just be able to buy everybody good, and everybody else would be like, whoa, what are we meant to do? We can't compete on money. So to stop that, the NFL has a salary cap which says, you can only spend, say, 150 million, and how you split that out across your team is your prerogative, but it just stops teams hoarding all of the good players. Like, that's why you've got to be good at drafting, which is every team gets 7 draft picks a year, and they get to pick out of all of the college players who come through. And you'll have 1 pick in each round, depending on. So if you were the worst team last year, you'll get the first pick this year, and if you were the best team last year, you get the last pick, and it kind of just works like that. So you've got to be good at drafting, because if you're not, then you won't have good players coming through, because you can't afford to pay and have all of the amazing players on your team. I mean, the Chiefs are somehow doing it. I don't know how. They are pulling magic tricks, doing how many good players they got on their team. But if you're good at drafting, all of these rookie guys, the ones who are new to the team, they're all cheap. No one, no one. They're not getting paid very much money. So it's you got to be good at that. So it's lots of different factors which make a good team. But you can't afford to pay everyone, so over time you will have to start to offload players. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Still a bold statement, though, to say they're one of the most dominant teams ever in sport.
I don't know if they are. I was just raising the question: is there examples? Because you could say Mercedes dominating the F1 for how long?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing with the Chiefs is that you could look at it and go,
it's only 2 years as well, though.
Well, it is only 2 years. But they have also got a lot of quality everywhere, really.
Yeah, but that's because of the way the organisation's run, in that they are getting the most out of their money. They make savvy moves.
They do make savvy moves, you are right. They do make savvy moves. I mean, I'm probably going to be a little bit pessimistic and say perhaps not the most dominant. I think if they were to go and win the Super Bowl again...
I think, you can't really call that... I mean, you always compare in the NFL against the Patriots teams of old, because they have 6 Super Bowls, the most Super Bowls of any team ever in history. But to be fair, Tom Brady won those 6 Super Bowls over about 20 years. So there's obviously, to be fair, a lot of the success came at the latter end when he wasn't getting paid as much, so it meant they could spend that money in other positions. But to be fair, you're winning 6 Super Bowls in 20 years. You got to say that's a pretty dominant team. But the Chiefs, they look like they could go out and get 3 in the next 5 years.
Yeah, they do. You're right.
And it's like, would you say that's more dominant than the Patriots? Possibly.
Well, yeah, I guess there's dominance versus longevity, isn't it?
And that's the thing. What do you describe dominance as? Is it just being able... I know. Is it just single season, or like one-off teams that you go, that team, like that Liverpool team of last season, unplayable. If that's not got any injuries, it's pretty much the same team as this year, but with no injuries, that team is pretty much unplayable against a lot of teams. So, do you think, well, perhaps if we can't think of a team that's going to do it as long. I mean, the United teams of old, possibly Liverpool for even older, but I don't really know much about them. But you know what I mean? Some of those teams, you know what, they were at the top for a while. Arsene Wenger's Arsenal that went 49 games unbeaten, went a whole season unbeaten at one stage. You know, and to be fair, actually going back to Arsenal, Arsene Wenger did make the point that in the decade after they moved from Highbury to the Emirates and they had to sort of do a bit of cost-cutting measures, he won the league once and came second 5 times, which I think goes massively under the radar for how good of a team Arsene Wenger had assembled there.
No one remembers second.
They
That's
don't,
the problem, isn't it? That's the thing. I get what you mean, though, is in this, you know, it's quite easy to like say, oh well, they've only done it once, but it's like, yeah, but how dominant were they in that once?
Yeah,
for you know,
because like when you do a single season, you can think of some better teams.
I mean, I'm going to ask you a question now. Obviously, like I said, you follow NFL perhaps a bit more closely than I do. Out of what you've seen this season, I mean, obviously the Chiefs are looking good, the Steelers are looking good. Obviously, you know, perhaps a little bit skewed based on who they're playing. Who would you say is like an early contender for Super Bowl?
I don't think you can really write off the Chiefs at all because they won it last year. And to be fair,
and they're motoring.
The team when you looked at their schedule pre-season, there was probably 3 teams that you'd look at and go, they might lose to, and they were the Ravens, who were one of the teams the Steelers beat, but they have not looked the same Ravens as last year. They seem a little bit found out. Because Lamar Jackson's not really a passing quarterback. He's pretty much a running back playing quarterback, but a very, very fast one. So that's kind of his niche, and it kind of operates on the basis of having a good defense. That's to do with some of the gameplay rules in the NFL, but I won't discuss them now, but in the future perhaps. But so the Ravens haven't quite been as good as last season, so that was one of the teams the Chiefs dispatched early. They beat the Texans early. But they weren't one of those 3 major teams. But that's another team which they could have scuppered to. They've got the Saints to play still. That I think they play them not this week, but the week after. So that'll be a really interesting one because the Saints, I think they're on I think it's 9-2 record, but they've won about 8 straight. So they're really cooking. And then the other one was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who, even though they only won 27-24 last night, they were far superior. They went up 17-0, and then they kind of just went into cruise control of let's just run out the clock all the time. Trying to do spectacular plays if they wanted to. So it was a little bit of let's just try some stuff out towards the end of the second half.
Yeah.
So I think the Chiefs definitely are going to be in there. I think the Steelers are going to end up getting to that championship game with the Chiefs to play in the Super Bowl. But I don't know if the Steelers really... The thing is, they've got a really good defence, but that offence hasn't really been tested because they haven't played many great defensive teams.
No, that's the point, isn't it? And am I right in saying they've changed it slightly this year, haven't they? So only the first team gets a bye in the first round of the playoffs?
Yeah, but it also means you get an extra team making the playoffs through the wild card system.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't remember whether it was... Yeah, I think it was the last season where the Chiefs... Because they finished top, didn't they?
No, they finished second.
Perhaps it was the year... Did they finish top the year before?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so they had a bye, didn't they, the year before?
Yeah, we had a bye. We had a bye last year as well.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, because
the rule only came in this year. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so we came second last year. Yeah. We had the bye. I feel like we almost looked worse after the bye. I haven't had the break. We didn't look quite as... We looked a little bit...
That is a little bit of a factor. Some people don't like the idea of having that week off. A bye is a week off, sorry, for people who aren't aware. It's a strange term. I don't know why they call it that. But yeah, if you have one bye week throughout the season where you haven't got to play. It's like your one rest week. But also if you... Well, up until this season, if you were finished in the top 2 in your conference, you'd get the first week off. Of the playoffs, and the other teams all have to play each other, and then you'd be introduced the next week almost fresh. That's your advantage. But some people didn't like it because you lost a bit of your rhythm.
Yeah, you lose a bit of momentum, don't you?
So I think it can go either way, but at the end of the day, a bye week means it's one less game to win. And you know what I mean? When you're in the playoffs, anyone can beat anyone. It doesn't matter if you were 7th, going into it, doesn't matter if you were first, you can lose to anyone.
I mean, without wanting to be too topical, but 1 week bye could mean 1 week more chance of getting COVID this time around as well. Yeah. Because I was watching the coverage last night, and they were saying how the Ravens were almost desperate to get to, because it's the Saints they were playing, isn't it?
The Ravens?
Was it the Saints? Yeah. Who were the Ravens playing this week? Steelers. Sorry, why did I say?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Saints Broncos maybe that as well.
Yeah, they were desperate to get to where they were playing, just so that, because I think the rule is once you've travelled, you don't have to do a COVID test or something random like that.
Oh really?
Yeah. So they were like, oh, can we go a day early, and get there, and then we'll be ready there. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, interestingly, the Patriots, when they played the Chiefs earlier in the season, their quarterback Cam Newton got COVID, so he wasn't playing. But they had to travel the day of the game, which was interesting because you never usually see that. They'd always travel the day before because obviously quite often, they were in that game, they were travelling across a time zone. So, wow. Yeah, it happens. Surprising that they travelled same day.
Very odd. Very odd. Yeah, so you've got a note here, staying with the NFL just for a little bit longer. You've put alternative ways of working out the playoff seasons.
Yeah, I thought about this the other day because I thought it was unfair. Because the way the playoff system works is, if you win your division, because the way the NFL works is 32 teams split into 2 conferences. Yeah. 16 one side, 16 the other. And those conferences are split into 4 further divisions. Mm-hmm. So you've got the North, the South, the East and the West. Yeah. And each season you will play everyone in your own division. So the Chiefs play the AFC West. So they will play the other 3 teams inside of that division twice. So that makes up 6 of their games. They'll play one of the other divisions within their own conference once. So everyone in that once. They'll play one of the teams in the other conference, one of their divisions, once. And then they'll play the 2 other teams in their own conference that finished in the same position as them the previous season, that they're not already playing. But what I was thinking was, for the playoffs, because if you win your division in your conference, you automatically make the playoffs. And then the 3 teams with the next best record, regardless what division they're in, they could all be in 1. They could be 1 from each. They could be 2 from 1, 1 from another. They will also make the playoffs. And it'll almost work as the team that... So the team that finished first overall in the conference, they'll get a week off now.
Yeah.
And then the team that finished second will play the team that finished 7th, very much like the championship playoffs in football. Yeah. And then the team that finished 3rd will play the team that finished 6th. The team that finished 4th will play the team that finished 5th. Yeah. And then you look at it and you go, okay, that is what the way the system has worked. But if you've already guaranteed that 4 teams are going to be coming from the divisions, why don't the divisional winners, why aren't they decided purely on your record against the other teams in your division?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because, in a sense, that pretty much claims the right you are the best in the division, because you'd be... You know what I mean? You could end up losing to all the teams in your own division, but winning all your other games and somehow scrambling enough wins together to win and be your division's leader, which I thought, well, that's a bit broken, because... You know what I mean? That you wouldn't literally be a division winner. But also, when you've got certain divisions, like the NFC West, where they've got the Seattle Seahawks... I'll get up their records now, sorry, whilst I'm chatting. Okay. They've got the Seattle Seahawks, they've got the Arizona Cardinals, they've got the LA Rams, and the San Francisco 49ers. Now... For those of you unaccustomed with the NFL, they might mean nothing. But the San Francisco 49ers last year got to the Super Bowl and lost to the Chiefs. The Cardinals this year, their record is 6-5. The Rams is 7-4. The Seahawks is 7-3, and the 49ers, who made the Super Bowl, are 5-6, showing just how competitive that division is. That the team that's bottom of the division is the team that was in the Super Bowl last year. So those 4 teams are all really good. They play each other every week. Well, not every week. They play each other twice each. And that means they're all sort of getting a win on one, losing to the other, losing to somebody else, beating somebody else.
Yeah, they're taking off each other, then, aren't they?
And then you get another team. So, for instance, you go to the NFC East, and all 4 teams there are rubbish. And it's like, so divisional winners-wise, one team from each of them's guaranteed to go. But then when you go into the wild card spots, the second team in the NFC West might not actually make it in. And neither will the team in the NFC East, because for the wrong reasons. The one in the NFC East, rightfully so, shouldn't get there because it's rubbish, but the one in the NFC West should really be getting there. But because they're playing against such good teams in their own division,
they lose out.
They're getting pillaged. It's better
Pillage of points. Yeah. Points pillage. You're right.
It's unfair in some ways.
It's almost not weighted on how well you play. It's just purely weighted on which league you're in and whether you do...
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So like, it works for a few. Like, the Patriots, for years, apart from this year, this is the first year they've been rubbish, but for years they've been dominating the AFC East, where the other three teams combined are probably as good as the NFC East teams. That's been the scenario for ages.
Yeah.
So it just meant that the Patriots pretty much were guaranteed 6 wins every season.
Yeah.
Out of 16 games, that's already almost half. It's like, so they were always going to finish number one in the AFC, just purely on the basis that they've got an easy division. Then you've got other teams like the AFC South, where they've got the Titans, the Colts, who are one's 8-3, one's 7-4. Then the Texans, who are 4-7, and the Texans are a very good team, but they've been playing all the hard teams this year. So perhaps the division winners should be based on who you play in your division, and then the wildcard spots, though that record which gets you into there, should be based on the other 10 games, not including the 6 games you've already played against your division winners, because then it makes it more fair for teams like the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, you're almost comparing with everyone else, aren't you?
Because, well, on ESPN, they beautifully put it down where they show you your record against your own division, then they show you your record against, well, they got it against your conference, but you can work out what it is if you include some of the other teams.
Yeah.
For instance, the LA Rams, they're 7-4 at the moment, but they're 1-2 in their own division. So if you take that away, they're actually a 6-2 team, which makes it sound a lot better than a 7-4 team against all other teams. It's just that they play hard teams in their own division, so they're always getting scuppered by it.
This is some high level.
It is. It's
technical discussion. This is.
I tried to explain everything so that people aren't like, "Oh, I don't understand that," but I might have overcomplicated it. But
well, look. To be fair, as in with the NFL, I feel like you've got to sit and kind of read about it a bit. Yeah. Otherwise, even now, even having followed it for a couple of years, I still get confused about it. So, if there are people who are listening and feel like they don't know what we're talking about, then
honestly, just pop onto ESPN, look at a table, and then it'll show you how it all breaks down. And
there's a reason why ESPN are ESPN, and that's because ESPN do good things like this, and they do it in a way that everyone understands.
Yeah,
there we are. Right, should we move on to stat of the week before we finish?
Let's do it, Jack.
Do you want to go first? Because mine's almost got like a mini discussion off it.
Yeah,
my stat of the week. So if you go first.
I mean, this stat I found before Spurs played Chelsea, but it kind of still holds true. It's Liverpool are, or now were, only on goal difference, top of the Premier League. But they have conceded more goals than 20th place Sheffield United, which is crazy.
Wow.
So defence does not win leagues, offence does, quite clearly.
Well, I feel like in the... Could you put like Liverpool in brackets without Virgil van Dijk?
Nope, it's Liverpool. They need to... Yeah, this is Liverpool that's going to end up mid-table, Jack. I've already said it.
Mid-table, wow.
The new Arsenal.
Right, okay. We'll move on from there before Arsenal fans shout at you. My stat of the week is that, and I was shocked at this, Sheffield United have played 10, lost 9, drawn 1, which is officially the worst start to a Premier League season by a Premier League team.
It surprises me. I didn't think Derby were better than.
Yeah, well, I think
guess it's
I've got
only
that
a
right.
Point. You literally get 2 and you've doubled.
Yeah, them. I mean, I may be wrong on that. I'm pretty sure that's what I read. So I guess off that, like this is like a little mini discussion to finish. Where's it gone wrong? Like, how have a team that like finished nearly. I mean, they kind of tailed off after we had the break of coronavirus, but as in they were kind of in the European spots for a little bit.
Yeah, well, in a sense, they were like that shiny new thing that everybody was not really understood. You know, they hadn't completely utilised every tactic against them. You know what I mean? They hadn't completely played with them enough to go, this is how you beat them. Because I think people pretty quickly, well, not pretty quickly, it took them a season to cotton on to the fact that Sheffield United can't attack. they haven't got a good striker in that team. I mean,
Yeah.
I say that. I did see a stat which said Ollie McBurney has had more big chances than the entire Arsenal squad.
I think that's more damning on Arsenal than
Yeah.
it is credit to
But
Sheffield,
so that's
isn't it?
Ollie McBurney alone. But that team can't score goals. Like when we were
Wild.
just chatting last night, and West Brom Sheffield United. I didn't watch it, but we were just sort of following the score. And I mean, you said West Brom have scored, and I said, well, that's the game because Sheffield United cannot score. They are
Yeah,
they're a very
they're
good
really struggling.
defensive team, but defense is when you're down the bottom, it's a bit pointless. You need a good attack because you're just trying to scramble away a goal from somewhere to get a win or a draw. That's kind of just the way they play down there. But
Yeah.
not good.
I mean, I guess off from that then maybe a little bit, as in you can see, okay, apart from Sheffield, who were in the Premier League last season, and Leeds have kind of done fairly well so far this season. I think there's a little bit to that because of the name and the heritage of the club, they've almost had that little boost. But as in, I feel like nowadays a lot of the Championship clubs tend to just come up and then go straight back down. I mean, you look at, like, for example, you look at Fulham and you look at, who are the other promoted team? West Brom, there you go.
Yeah.
They look almost certain to go. Would you say they look certain to go back down?
I say
Based on
Fulham
what
do.
we've seen so far?
I think Fulham do. I know they just beat Leicester tonight, but
Yeah.
Leicester.
There's a reason why it was my highlight, and that's because it was not expected.
Yeah, Leicester are a strange team at the moment. They don't seem to be clicking, but then on
No.
other games they seem really good. So I don't really get that. But West Brom, they're an interesting team, West Brom, because they're the sort of team that can come up and stay up, but they're also the same sort of team that could end up finishing 20th.
Yeah.
It really depends on if the signings they make click. And they don't always click, they usually don't. But whenever they do, they might stay up for 2, 3, 4 years, and then they'll go back down. But yeah, the gap is growing a little bit between the Championship and the Prem. I mean, I've only noticed it as much since watching Forest, because we lost Matty Cash this year to Villa, the right back, and Villa also fleeced Brentford out of Ollie Watkins. I think Ben Rahm I can't remember his first name, but Ben Rama. Is it Ben?
Yeah, Ben Rama.
Where's he
think
gone? Has he gone Fulham?
Possibly.
He went from Brentford, and I mean Forest. I mean, just missed out on goal difference out of the playoffs last year. But this year they're literally the position one up from the relegation zone. And Brentford are just outside of the playoffs. But to be fair, they're unbeaten in their last 5, drawn 3, won 2. So if you go before that last 5, I know obviously it's like, well, clearly they are good because they've just, unbeaten in the last 5. But if you go before that 5, then, you're looking at a bottom half of the table side. So it's like these teams, as much as they can get good players and they can afford to pay the wages, or some of them can, maybe not to the Premier League standard, but, to be a good team. If they don't get Premier League football, instantly they've got to do these cost-saving measures where they're selling their best players, even ones which come through the youth academy, just to cover costs. And it's because of financial fair play. As much as it's introduced to stop your Roman Abramoviches and the Etihad group that have bought Man City from just buying football, it's more just putting a cap on some of these smaller clubs and being able to be competitive.
Yeah, not ideal. I mean, I guess I was going to ask about the point about the gap growing between the Premier League and the Championship. As in, I feel like when you look at the, as in, who were the promoted teams last year? Sheffield, Norwich, weren't they? They went straight back down.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who the other one was.
Oh, who was the other one?
Can't remember.
That's interesting. Cannot even remember the other team. Because Bournemouth went down.
Not very many.
But let's think about it the other way around. Bournemouth went down, Norwich went down. Who else went down? Not Cardiff. Before that.
I can't even remember now.
I gotta look it up.
Well, there you are.
Who came? Okay, hang on. Let's see the teams that are currently up. It's not Brighton, was it? It was not. No, not Leeds. Oh, Villa. Villa came up
Oh yeah, Villa came up.
because they're doing all right.
Yes. Yeah, there we are. So, yeah, I mean, perhaps it's just related to this season that's you could raise that statement.
Yeah.
But there we are. Right, that's it for another week of the Down to the Wire podcast. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
That is your weekly update for the latest and greatest. We'll be back next week where we will be discussing everything and anything sport. We are on Breaker. Thought I'd put that one first this week because that's one of our most used ones. We are on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're also on Twitter and Instagram.
We're on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts.
We're on Google Podcasts.
We are on Google Podcasts. I checked the other day and it was there. I was like,
I'm pretty sure like every week you've gone, and we're on Google. Oh no, we're not on Google Podcasts, but we're finally there. Yeah. There we are. Right, thank you all for listening, and we shall talk to you all soon.